The Panthers front office members get their day with the Cup, and we have more details on the Panthers exhibit at the Hall of Fame. We'll discuss this and more next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Wednesday, July 17th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You can follow me on X at MondoMan12, follow show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs wind down, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. So very excited to come back here for another edition here on the show to discuss more Stanley Cup content, which is great when you're covering a team that just won, and all the summer content that we are going to be providing you here. And we have a whole episode worth of that here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast here on a Winans Wednesday edition of the show, where Jacob Winans is back here to discuss the front office members' day with the Cup, a few of them, the details on the exhibit at the Hall of Fame, and we're going to discuss more of Cup traditions for the Stanley Cup. And Jacob, welcome back to the show. Great to have you back here, my friend.
Yeah, it's another episode in the championship summer, so lots to talk about. We always enjoy recapping days with the Cup and summer activities when you've actually come out on the winning side of this thing. So yeah, I'm having fun. This is awesome.
Yep, and let's continue the fun with this. So we saw the photo on Monday of Phil Pritchard posting of Bill Zito with the cup in his hand, with a Mahi in the top part of the cup. And we all thought at the time that was his day with the Cup, but still a great celebration there for him. He obviously, with Bill Zito having a great time there on going deep sea fishing, but it was actually the boat of VP of Sports Performance in Chris McCellan. It happened to be his day with the Cup, and for him being the first Australian to have his name on the Cup, which Nathan Walker of the Washington Capitals was Australian born, but didn't qualify to get his name on the Cup. So it all made sense when we were seeing photos surface online of the Cup at Isla Morada, where Carter Verhaeghe happened to be at, because he happened to be on that trip. Bill Zito happened to be on that trip, and conditioning coach Mike Joyce was on that same trip for that. So great story for Chris McCellan, and also of just looking more into backgrounds of just the front office, and also Bill Zito. It's crazy because I knew that he was a former bat boy of the Milwaukee Brewers, but did you know this, Jacob, that he's the son of a former NFL player? Bill Zito Sr. used to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That part I did not know until researching it just now.
I was not aware of that either, but that's pretty cool. It speaks a lot to his just kind of the toughness and hard-nosed mindset he brings to the Panthers from a front office position. But what I really love about that is also just the diversity across sports. One thing, working in sports is that you can, no matter what sport you work in, you can always learn something in that sport that kind of transcends other sports, and you can carry across the aisle to other things. So working in baseball and having a dad who played in the NFL, there's so much that he's able to bring from those into the way he runs his hockey team. I think that's really awesome. But like we were talking about pre-recording, I feel like this summer we've learned more about these guys off the ice and outside of their roles, and just kind of, like you said, researching, and it's really cool to get to see a little bit inside and behind the scenes of just what the product is on the ice. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of this summer too.
No doubt, and we get to see who these guys are as people. And I mean, when you and like you said, relating it to different sports. I mean, you think of the Greers, the GMs of the Miami Dolphins and the San Jose Sharks, two different sports. Patrick Mahomes and his dad Pat Mahomes, Pat Mahomes was a reliever in the major leagues too for that. And obviously it helped with him with Bill Zito eventually when he went to Yale and played hockey between 84 and 87. And also really taking that knowledge and becoming an agent, which the big highlight players that he was an agent for was Tim Thomas, former Panther, Tuukka Rask, who he inked an 8-year deal. Zito was the GM that negotiated that contract, and former Panther Anthony Emmy, Stanley Cup champion Anthony Emmy too, with the Chicago Blackhawks too during that. But also, I do want to inform that Bill Zito was not the one who caught that fish. It was actually Chris McCellan too. But you spoke about, and I like what you said about even when it comes to different sports and relating it, but it also comes down to also working in different sports too in the front office. And this gives us an opportunity to talk about Sunny Mehta, who's also worked in analytics in a different sports league. He's worked with 6 different clubs with Major League Baseball, but he wasn't always in that role too. And neither, obviously, he wasn't always in this role with the Florida Panthers neither. But also his start with being of Indian descent. Fun fact about him: he's a professional poker player and is also a jazz guitarist, and also another stint in South Florida where he attended the University of Miami Frost School of the Arts for studying jazz guitar right before going to New Orleans too, and help with how music and relates to all of this, and being a poker player, math. Nerd analytics, it really does fit in, and it helped him with getting his first job with the Arizona Coyotes, then spending 4 years in New Jersey too, being a consultant with the Washington Capitals, and then right before he got hired with the Florida Panthers, and then being promoted to the head of analytics too. So great story about just the guy moving on up, and he took the cup on Monday to his high school in New Jersey too. And even though he joked around being a bench warmer on the team, on the ice hockey team that he was at, I mean, he also put in that belief to those kids that, hey, even if you're not the best hockey player, you could find a role in this sport. And also with that goes back to what you say about just the other sports relating, and that how you could find a way to contribute.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that a lot right now in the NHL is non-traditional paths to very important roles within hockey organizations, and the Panthers are a good example of it. And it adds more credibility to it when it actually pays off with a Stanley Cup win. But a good example that I could bring up right now is Carolina Hurricanes just hired a new GM, Eric Tulsky, who
used to be a journalist.
Yeah, his career track, his education is crazy. I mean, he has his background in chemistry. He was like a scientist, has patents in science, worked in journalism. Like, he's done everything but run a hockey team. And now it's almost like guys completing side quests. It just really pays off sometimes when you kind of find what you're passionate about and take those skills you have in other areas and apply it. But I think when we talk about the Panthers' use of analytics, it's a touchy subject with Panther fans, given the front office change of several years ago. Seems like just yesterday, but it's going on 10 years almost. When the Dale Talon era was kind of put on hold for a minute for the Tom Rowe era of advanced analytics kind of driving all decisions. The Panthers finally found that balance. And under the Bill Zito front office regime, they've kind of found a balance where, yeah, you're going to make hockey trades. You're going to bring in hockey guys. Matthew Tkachuk is a good example. But then there's also that analytics component, and one of the reasons Bill Zito is so good at finding these diamonds in the rough is because guys who get limited minutes or have really good production at the AHL level, but don't necessarily have that NHL exposure, you can sort of track how they play in those smaller minutes and project how they would do in bigger roles. And analytics are a big reason why we have Carter Verhaeghe. Analytics are a big reason why the Panthers were comfortable making trades for Sam Bennett, guys who weren't shining, but maybe there's something that you can see there in their game that's a positive trend if you put them with the right group. Gus Forsling is another good example. He's a waiver claim because analytically he was very impressive in his AHL time with Carolina. So it's those type of things that really pay off, and you have to have that perfect blend. And I think the Panthers analytics department definitely deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, and then thinking that things will eventually average out when it comes to possibly when it comes to you see XG, and then you're saying, okay, the eye test is reflecting chance after chance, and then eventually everything will balance out analytically and for the front office and their way of thinking for that. And it's great to see how much they've evolved over time in just, like you said, 10 years. But we're gonna continue this conversation on the Stanley Cup, and we spoke a little bit yesterday 2 days ago on the Panthers having their exhibit officially at the Hockey Hall of Fame. But now we're going to go deeper into the details of it. We're going to discuss that more next on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And I love sports. I love them so much, and I never want them to stop. But the playoffs are over, and we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sporting like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up the bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to this Wednesday, July 17th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. So, Jacob, we spoke about how much fun we're having on the podcast covering the Florida Panthers, but it's not stopping the players from having their fair share of fun too. First of all, I want to congratulate Eetu Luostarinen on getting married this past weekend out in Finland, and all the Panthers Finns were there to represent Barkov, Anton Lundell, Nico Mikkola. They were there present, and I'm gonna look up the picture real quick while I give you the floor. But you know, I might be thinking too much into this, and tell me if I am. I noticed that in the picture, Barkov, no tie, one button loose, and he's the only one who doesn't really have his hair like brushed too. I don't know if I don't know who was in the court or the wedding party, but still, that screams to me how much of a badass he is. Like, hey, I'm just showing up to a wedding. I'm just cool, casual, cool, but also wear business casual for him. But what do you think when you see that picture of him, no tie, and not needing to impress anyone there?
That's very, very Sasha Barkov. He's the captain. He kind of goes at his own pace. Doesn't really care about the flash. He's just being there for his friend. Super low key guy. That's kind of why we love him. But also, I think it's cool that Finn group has really stuck together, become really close. I saw a couple of people joking that Barkov only owns one suit, and it's that one because we've seen him wear that suit to plenty of games. But yeah, there it is. I don't have much of a fashion sense, but obviously Eetu's going to be the best dressed guy there. But Anton Lundell looks super sleek, and Mikkola looks very professional, like a butler, and then you got Barkov just kind of chilling over there. But I can't knock it. That's his style. I just think it's really cool. I think it's cool seeing the Finns kind of becoming a really tight knit group, and I would not be shocked if all four of them represent Finland in the Four Nations tournament coming up. That would not surprise me at all. I think all four of those guys are deserving, and I think that's good for team chemistry. where those four are concerned. But what a move! What a move from Bill Zito getting Mikkola. He's really fit in so well on and off the ice, and those guys are
especially late game situations.
Yeah, definitely.
With the boards in the corners. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And Etu, I got to say this about Etu. He's quickly become one of my favorite Panthers personality wise, because he's so quiet and goes about his business on the ice. But ever since the Panthers won the Cup, I think out of everyone on the team, we've seen him absolutely come out of his shell with his wild side lately. Just the the parade video, the parade footage where he was clearly drunk and was just having the time of his life. The radio call in when they were partying in Miami at 11. He's become a fan favorite on and off the ice. So shout out to him for getting married, and maybe he'll settle down now a little bit, but that's cool. He's got a couple of rings this summer. So
two great life events going on at once, and also Roberto Luongo taking his family to Milan to see Taylor Swift too. So that's another cool part of the summer.
And while we're on the topic of NHL Winans and Panthers, shout out also to Mason Marchment, who just got married too, former Panther. Yep. I don't know if you saw it, but he had a suit. He wore a suit that had pictures of him and his dad, Brian Marchment, on the inside of his suit, which I thought was really, really cool. Yeah, super emotional there. Always hope for the best for Marchment. He's a great guy, but yeah, it's NHL wedding season, and Etu got the ball rolling.
Yeah, so congratulations to Mason Marchment too. So yeah, Roberto Luongo tweeting from a Taylor Swift concert in Milan, which his tweets are continuing to be legendary. Matthew Tkachuk partying with Travis Kelce, Miles Teller from the movie Fantastic, Blake Griffin, former NBA player, and Chris Crawford from The Boys too. And also Verhaeghe posted a picture of him golfing with Nick Cousins and Ryan Lomberg today too. So that's another cool off-season event.
And Matthew Tkachuk, I saw a picture of him golfing as well with Tony Romo the other day.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Tony Romo's a great golfer. He's been on
fantastic golfer.
He's been on some PGA Tour events where he's gotten been low amateur. So
yeah, that is true. And I'm a big Cowboys fan. Tony Romo's always been a favorite of mine. So seeing him golfing with Tkachuk was pretty cool too.
And now that Joe Pavelski has announced his retirement, that's another great golfer in the NHL world too. So maybe they could join in together. Two guys who played in Dallas, even though it wasn't at the same time too. So cool. Maybe they can link up. Him and John Smoltz is another great golfer too, from a tournament that I've been to. But so going back to the topic, going back to what we were originally let's go to the details of the Hall of Fame exhibit for the Florida Panthers. So we spoke about that there is a display. But the details of the display have been tweeted thanks to Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports. So the jerseys in the display are Sergei Bobrovsky's and Aaron Ekblad's. Aaron Ekblad's is the white road jersey, while Bobrovsky's is the red. The gloves, one of the gloves is Matthew Tkachuk, while the gloves in the background are Sasha Barkov. The stick is Sam Bennett. The helmet is Sam Reinhart. And the skates are Anton Lundell. But the conversation, the thing that everyone wants to talk about, is the mouth guard, the Matthew Tkachuk mouth guard. We see it on TV. We see it on the side, the fish hook. I don't even know if he actually wears it. I don't think I've actually ever seen him wear it. But once again, I'm gonna give you the floor while I pull up the picture for the audience here. But what do you think when you see that that display? But most importantly, the mouth guard.
Well, my first thought when I saw it was that I just kind of wondered if that was going to be a part of the exhibit or not before and after the Chris Kreider incident. If that hadn't happened, maybe it's not part of the exhibit, but I think that became such a funny storyline in the Eastern Conference Final. It became part of the Panthers lore this season. When for those who don't know, I'm sure all Panthers fans are aware, but Chris Kreider took Matthew Tkachuk's mouth guard and tried to chuck it into the stands, and Tkachuk famously said that was Kreider's best play all series, which that's hilarious. So I think after that happened in the Eastern Conference Final, and the Panthers ended up kind of taking control of the series after that, I think you can't keep it out, and that's just kind of Tkachuk's trademark. is the mouth guard that he's chewing through. Anyone who didn't see this, he did have an interview with Goldie after the playoffs and said that he actually got a new mouth guard every series. Started each series with a new one and only used one per series, when during the regular season he goes through maybe 4 in total. So this one is definitely not as beat up as the regular season ones are, but I thought it was funny. It'd be especially funny if this mouth guard was the one that Kreider threw, but I'm sure this is the one from the Stanley Cup.
Highly doubt it, but also let's also not forget that if Kreider successfully threw the mouth guard over the glass, he would have had a misconduct too. So let's also that you just when you brought that up, that actually reminded me of that too. So crazy to think that with and you see the part in that bottom in the back where he's actually chewing on it with the back of his teeth too. So we've seen it's crazy because the NHL has their own version of Steph Curry. You see Steph Curry doing it, especially when he's shooting free throws. Obviously with that part of basketball, it's slowing down, but for Tkachuk, the camera is not always zoomed in at him at all times. There's not as many stoppages. Your play is on the fly too with this sport. So we don't always get to see how actually it's beat up too. So that's another thing for the mouth guard for Tkachuk too. So I think next time I see Chucky, I'm not necessarily I don't know if I'm going to necessarily ask him to bring it out, but maybe ask him a little bit of how much more beat up the mouth guard is, and if he ever considers going through more, or if he maybe will ever consider getting a new one in a new series as they advance. But I can also get it why you get a new one too, because the hits are harder. You need to protect more. You need to be there for your team. So I can also understand the logic between that too.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. As far as uniform superstitions go, Tkachuk's mouth guard is not even close to the weirdest one. If you ever have time, look up Sidney Crosby's uniform superstitions and Connor McDavid. Some of these guys have just crazy things that they have to do equipment wise. So Tkachuk's mouth guard is not the craziest one, and definitely not the grossest one. There's some really nasty ones out there if you really follow hockey. But yeah, it's kind of funny. It's really funny how he goes about his business with the mouth guards. But honestly, I could see it. If it's everything in sports is marketable, and the mouth guard thing is it's really there. It's something that you can market, because if you think back, as you know, South Florida sports fans, the Dwayne Wade Band-Aid became a huge icon in South Florida. People were wearing them to games. You couldn't go to a park without seeing people just with a Band-Aid on their eye, just because Dwayne Wade did it after getting stitches. I could definitely see Matthew Tkachuk branded mouth guards becoming a hit around here. So something to think about, especially now that he's got a Hall of Fame mouth guard.
Well, during the 2023 run to the final, there was fans in section 101 who all of them had mouth guards. One person purchased all of them for his section, at least his row.
Yep.
At least. It's cool. So that was really cool to see when that happened last year too. So we're gonna continue the conversation on the Stanley Cup and more of hockey traditions, and continue this conversation. We're gonna discuss more of why and where the whole captain touching the cup first all began. We're gonna discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. And we're driven for the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for candidates isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Don't ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And you can leverage over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. So join over 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners to the show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your job more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. And thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Wednesday, July 17th edition of the show. Another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the podcast. So, Jacob, the whole, we spoke about traditions, but we haven't really discussed the why and when the tradition of the Stanley Cup all started for the NHL, for when the captain touches it first, at least. So the first time it happened for the captain touching the cup was in 1932 with the Toronto Maple Leafs, but it had not become a tradition until 1951. But there have been 4 examples of teams who the captain did not lift the Stanley Cup first for their team. And also, some of them are actually pretty heartwarming stories, and some of them are just hit you real hard. And one of them, actually, let me go in order first. 1988, Gretzky wanted the team to take to go straight to the photo instead of lifting the cup. That was his 4th Stanley Cup. So difference between his first and his 4th. And crazy enough, that happened to be his last game as an Edmonton Oiler right before the trade. The other one was Guy Cardinal let Dennis Savard lift the Stanley Cup first instead of him in 1993, the last time a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup. The one where it really gets hits for me was 1998, where the Detroit Red Wings win back-to-back Stanley Cups. The offseason before, one of their players, Vladislav Konstantinov, gets paralyzed from the waist down due to from a car crash due to him being in a limousine celebrating the Stanley Cup, and the limo driver was drunk, went off the rails and severely injured him, which ended his playing career too. So when the Detroit Red Wings won the Stanley Cup in 98, instead of Steve Yzerman lifting the cup first, he brought it over to Vladislav Konstantinov, held it. I'm not sure if it was on his lap or the armchair or the armchair part of it. I'd have to see the video again. I've seen it quite a few times, but not recently. And then the team surrounding Konstantinov there, and even today, almost 30 years later, seeing that it's really sad, but also really heartwarming to see how much family Konstantinov is. And also the last one, 2001. And this has been ingrained, at least the commentary by Gary Thorne is definitely one that I definitely heard in my younger years, when Ray Bourque finally won the cup. Multiple time Norris Trophy winner. If going down some Florida Panthers history, that is the guy who tripped Bill Zito when he scored that game-winning goal against the Boston Bruins in Game 5 of Round 1. But 20-plus year career, and then finally gets the cup in 2001. Joe Sakic says, "Here you go, Ray. You finally did it. 20-plus years in the NHL, you get to go out as a champion." So listening to the stories, and just crazy to think, also 4 times only in the last 70 years that the captain didn't lift it first, too. So when you think of those stories with those 4 instances, and also when you think about just how the different sports, when you think about NFL, MLB, and NBA, the owner touches it first. So that also makes this so much more special. When you think about the players are on the ice actually earning the trophy too. So that is what, once again, makes this so great. Oh, let me unmute you. Oh, you need to unmute yourself.
Looks like I muted myself. It's one thing that's one thing that makes the Stanley Cup so special, as far as winning that trophy. Just the fact that it's a trophy that you don't keep. It's a trophy that for lack of a better word, you don't keep the trophy. The trophy keeps you. It has your name on it, and you give it back, but you're forever a part of that. That's one thing that makes it so special, and the history and tradition involved with it. And then the fact that the NHL, they make it a point to hand that trophy to the captain of the team first. The players pass it to each other first. I really do love that way more than giving it to the owner first too. Yes, ownership is important. Leadership is important. They do pay the bills. They do establish the culture. It's not to discredit the importance of good ownership. The Panthers are a product of it. But at the end of the day, it's the players going to war. And in the NHL, it's no more true than in the NHL when there's no greater physical toll that you can pay in a playoff series and in the NHL playoffs. So that's one thing I love about the trophy. But yeah, I think we've talked about it for so long, just what it would be like when Barkov finally lifts the Stanley Cup. I think that was probably one of the best. You call it the cup lift. I think that ranks among the best. Maybe not quite Alex Ovechkin level, the raw emotion from that one, but in the past 10 years or so, there's not many better than watching Barkov lift that. Maybe we're biased, but we know it's just over the years, some of the doubts that people had about him. Could he be a captain? Could he be a leader? Is he vocal enough? Is he demanding enough of his teammates? Is he tough enough? For him to be the guy who lifts the cup with the C on his chest meant a ton to, I'm sure, him, but also just to this region, to this fan base. And yeah, it also is really cool to see after the funny moment after the Eastern Conference Final when he refused to touch the Prince of Wales trophy and kept his distance like it was poisonous, and kept his hands up. And the audio of Coach Paul Maurice telling him not to touch that trophy. I love that. It's another one of those moments for this team. But those moments you brought up about non-captains lifting it first, all of those are iconic. The Detroit Red Wings one stands out as probably one of the most emotional moments in the history of the sport. Incredible when that happened. I wish I was born and alive to see that, but obviously doing my research and knowing some hockey history, I watched a documentary on that Red Wings dynasty, and man, that story, that's a touching story. And then of course the Avalanche, as Panther fans, we don't love that era of Colorado Avalanche hockey. They handed us our first Stanley Cup defeat in '96, but when Bort got to lift the cup for the first time, that's another iconic moment in hockey history. Gary Thorne, a legendary broadcaster, had some of the greatest calls in the history of the NHL, the off the floor and on the board, and some of his fantastic calls. That's probably his greatest. And good tidbit of research and information there with Bork being the one who tripped Bill Lindsay on the breakaway. Not a lot of people realize that, but that makes that Bill Lindsay goal even more impressive when it's one of the greatest defensemen of all time that was trailing him. So that was I like that. It was a good little research you brought out there for the show.
Yeah. So for that it's crazy. Just the people who just put everything on the line. And I mean, you could argue that hockey players take as many brutal hits as football, and crazy to think how you're comparing 82 games versus a 17-game season and the less time between too. And that's really what's so hard about just winning this. And also, when I want to go back to what you said, you don't keep the cup keeps you. The first thing I thought of was Paul Maurice's press conference after. I did not win the cup. I got to share the cup. Like, how powerful is that?
Yeah, that's going to be in every promo and every commercial and everything that really defines what the Stanley Cup is. I think for Maurice, that's going to be one of the quotes, and there are many of them from Paul Maurice. One of the quotes that's going to go down to define his legacy as a coach. That's really what it's all about, and I think that's what makes the NHL so special. And obviously we talk about Ryan Lomberg before the game, before Game 7, when guys look nervous and tight and everyone was thinking about the game, and he just comes in, smile on his face, bouncing up and down, and he's like, together forever after this one, like knowing that in a few weeks he's probably not going to be a Panther anymore. He knew he was going to get bigger offers, and many of those guys on the team knew that this was going to be their last game together. But you win that cup and you're together forever. And I think that's really what it's all about. And just for young hockey players, anyone who wants to play hockey, work in hockey, have any kind of career in the NHL, and if the Stanley Cup is your ultimate goal, that Paul Maurice quote is what you should be looking to, because that's what you're aiming for.
It truly signals one word: family. That's really the one word I could really describe it, and it definitely shows more and more through their win. But Jacob, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on another edition of Winans Wednesday here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another successful show here and for the Summer of Champions, the Florida Panthers here. So tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Yep, you can follow me on X at Jacob Winans 8, and we'll keep this thing rolling. Championship summer.
Let's go, man. And I'll see you next week, my friend. Can't wait.
Can't wait.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast so you'll be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone, and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Jacob Winans, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.